3 things that are sort of informing today's talk. There'll be some shuffling of papers here. So the first is, a few days ago, my lovely husband, Glenn, who's at the back of the room there, he sent me a text with a post that he saw on X, I think it was, and it was about sequoia trees. It was written by an engineer named Rob Avis. He's the one he was his quote that we took into meditation today. And in this post, he writes about trees, these specific trees, that they can live through droughts, fires, storms, and climate shifts that would kill almost anything else. And this is the thing that kind of baffles him as an engineer. The tallest tree in the world has roots that only go 6 to 12 feet deep. So a tree that is over 300 feet tall somehow is supported by these tiny little shallow roots. Or is it? And so what he discovered was, because this should be impossible that something so big should have, such a shallow root system, that sequoias don't survive alone. That their roots actually travel out 50 to 80 feet wide and then interconnect and intertwingle with all of the other sequoia roots that are around. And so they share nutrients, water, and structural support, and when storms come in, they support each other. And so why is this important? Well, in our month of connection, and I've been talking about community a lot and what community and membership and stewardship mean, this is something that I thought, wow, like the trees do it naturally, and this is something that we long for, but sometimes we feel like we have to work at. And so, more on that in a second. The thing that is also informing today's talk is something that happened to me yesterday. As I was just about to start working on the newsletter for VTC, I spilled tea on my laptop. I've never had this experience before, but I knew enough to flip it upside down and let it drain, but there was tea all over the place. And then the rice thing. And so dried everything off and then stuck it in the rice and then thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because everything that I need to do for my job here is done on the laptop. And so thankfully, my husband, Glenn, has a laptop. It's pretty similar to mine, and he doesn't need his laptop like I need mine. So he let me use it, and the experience was that everything got slowed down because none of my stuff is on his laptop. And any access to anything online, I needed to put in a password that then needed to be verified through my email, which is only available on my laptop. And so I ended up having to contacted our fantastic email guy, and I just said, this is the situation, what can I do? Can I change the password? Can you change it for me at the back end or something so I can log into the server online? Because at least then I can access, the emails, even though I don't have all of my other stuff organized the way I do, or the calendar or whatever. So slowly over the last 24-ish hours, I have figured out how to get what I need, connect it all together so that I can prepare the things that I need to prepare, including yesterday's newsletter. Can I just ask who read the newsletter yesterday? Thank you. Yay, it was worth it. And make sure that the slides are done for today, and then have some notes for my talk, the order of service, and all that stuff. And so, for me, the first thing that comes up is, what's the lesson? What's the opportunity in this? What's the insight that I'm supposed to learn by spilling tea on my laptop? And then trying to figure it out, right? And then within a few minutes going, wait a minute. The harder I try and figure this out, the more blanks I'm going to come up with, right? So I had to let it go. The other thing that is informing today's talk is yesterday in this room, we had our 5th and final class of our Exploring the Practice of Prayer class, a 5-week series that I co-facilitated with VTC member Sherry Morgan, and it was so cool. There's a couple of people in the room here that were part of that class, and I'm so grateful that you were. And it was a really neat experience because I was bringing in prayer from a new thought perspective, so affirmative prayer, and then Sherry was bringing in her form of prayer, which is a very indigenous-based prayer, which is known as relational prayer. And then we got to sort of go back and forth with how they correlate, how they differ, And all learning, something the whole time as we learn about each other's styles of prayer and how similar they really are and how one can complement the other and vice versa. And so even though it was a very sort of like scratch the surface of what we can possibly learn about either style of prayer or either practice, it was really cool to just sort of dip our toes into those different pools of what prayer is and what it can look like and feel like when applied and practiced in our lives. And the thing that came up yesterday, as has in every single class so far, was the theme of connection. And yesterday, Sherry went first, and she brought in a bowl of ocean water, and we had an opportunity to connect with this ocean water. We had opportunities to connect with a plant, with some earth, with a rock. I can't remember if I'm forgetting something, but anyway, all elements and aspects of nature brought in as a guest for us to relate to and with. And so we were talking about connection, experiencing connection through her relational prayer practice, and then this theme of knowing came up. And it became really prominent in the class, this idea of knowing, not just believing, not just thinking about something, but knowing. In your very, very epicenter of being, knowing something with every fiber of your being that is true, no matter what is going on, no matter how you feel even, that there are just things that you know. And so as I was meditating this morning, then all of these three things were coming to mind, were very present for me, and the knowing I just couldn't let go of. And so I thought, okay, what is it about knowing? Show me. Show me what it is, and what is it that wants to be shared? And so I went back to this post about these trees, these massive, massive trees, and how at the end of his post, Rob Avis writes, most people try to build resilience by making themselves bigger, stronger, more independent. They stockpile resources, they build higher walls, they go it alone. But the most resilient systems in nature are interconnected, okay? And he writes, maybe the question isn't how do I become more self-sufficient, but how do I become more meaningfully connected? And so for me, when I was thinking back to, okay, the spilled tea, the community, the class, what is it that I'm opening up to here? Then I really sort of started thinking, in nature, interconnectivity is present everywhere. All the creatures, all the critters, all of the plant, the flora, the fauna, whatever it is that you want, what terms you want to use. But all of it is togetherness. Because if it doesn't interconnect, if it doesn't work together just naturally, trees don't have to think about working with another tree. Leaves don't have to think about what it is that they're supposed to do. Flowers and snakes and, the water, whatever. It all just is. It's doing its thing because it knows to do its thing, right? And it all has to be interconnected, all part of the ecosystem in order to survive. Humanity, I'm thinking that in order for us to thrive, we need to be part of community. We need to connect with people. We need to relate to people. We need to be together rather than independent and isolated most of the time. We are social creatures. We are meant to hang out in community, in packs, in groups, right? And then in prayer, the interconnectivity that is present in all being, that is the thing that we're knowing. That is the thing that we are tuning into. This guiding compass that Coralina was talking about, that Winnie listened to and experienced, this is what is present in us all the time. It's not something that we have to access. It's not something that we have to look up in some way or that we have to spend some time going to or something like that. It's who and what we are, always at our core. And we just keep being disconnected, or not disconnected, but our attention keeps being diverted to something else that might feel a little shinier, a bit louder, something that is more exciting than just like, wow, all I need to do is just stop and breathe and listen and just tune in. And even in the action of just stopping and pausing and listening and tuning in, even if there's nothing coming, there is so much power in that stillness. There is so much peace and there is so much poise. Not a word I use very often, but poise. And so it reminds me of this other thing that informed last week, which was this interview with Dr. Zach Bush and Alex Zach. And in it, Zach Bush is talking about this deep wound of humanity and this disconnect from nature. But he's also talking about this whole thing that a lot of people, and I know myself, I have been guilty of this again and again and again and again, is chasing for what it is that we want, like going after it, the do, achieve, just like pile more things on my plate so I can get more things done, knowing intellectually and in my heart that what I really need to do is to slow down, to be more spacious. And then when I don't pay attention, when I don't do that, when I don't listen, things like spilling tea on my keyboard happen, and then, oh my God, I have to slow down because I got to start from scratch again. And I got to go and just focus on only the things I need to do that require my attention right now, rather than allow myself to get distracted by the shiny thing or the open tab or, oh, maybe I can just get this done on my way to here. No, just do the newsletter. That's what I sat down to do, Then just do the order. That's what I sat down to do. Okay, so the laptop. For me, this morning, as I was in meditation and this knowing is coming up and coming up and coming up, there's still a part of me that's like, what's the big lesson? What's the big lesson? And there's a bigger part that is like, just chill. I don't need to know this lesson right now. The thing happened, right? Like I'm navigating the impact. And do I need to get a new computer? Maybe. Should I be bringing another computer that isn't mine to here? Probably. Should I have just paid attention to what was mine to do in that moment instead of allowing myself to be distracted? Yeah. And none of this is new. It's just I'm being reminded again because I shifted my attention, just off the mark for just a little bit, for just enough time for universe to go, hey, pay attention, right? Now, when it comes to community, stop chasing and start allowing, I gotta say, the thing that I feel kind of guilty of since I started here as spiritual director 2.5 years ago is trying to convince you guys that we're building community. Just because that's something that I think we're doing, that I want to do, no one is going to build community. I'm not going to be building community by myself, right? We're all part of that. And so it's up to each and every one of us to build community together in ways that are meaningful together for all of us. And so this is one of those ways, right? Coming together for Celebrate or Elevate or whatever. We have fellowship happening here. We have fellowship happening here today. That's another way. And there are lots of other ways, not just coming together here. There are other New Thought communities in this city that have incredibly strong communities. So strong that when we closed for the summer in August, a bunch of people went to those communities because those communities already are rock solid. Our community is a baby. Our community requires some tender, loving care and attention and nurturing and holding of hand as we learn to walk as little toddlers. And each of us is responsible for that. Each of us is responsible in how we're taking those steps, and how we're learning to walk, and how we're learning to explore and welcome the world in. And so when it comes to prayer, stop chasing and start allowing. In prayer, 5-step prayer, whether it is unity, whether it is science of mind, whether it is divine science, there is a part where we are just letting that prayer go. We are trusting and knowing that it is already done, that we don't have to figure out the how it's going to unfold. We just need to be clear on what it is that we are praying for, the intention or the declaration for the prayer, and then do our very best to declare that prayer, to intend for that prayer, to affirm that knowing from the highest level of consciousness that we can possibly embody in that moment. And that can shift from time to time. But the highest level of consciousness, and then we let it go, because it's not up to us to figure out which one of the gazillions of different ways that something could unfold is going to be the best one for us, the greatest and highest good for us in that moment. I will surrender to my greatest and highest good, right? We just sang that. And this is what we do when we let go. So, in the end, the questions that Rob Avis asked in his post about the sequoia trees, how do I become more self-sufficient versus how do I become more meaningfully connected? And the end there was to the right systems. And so he's talking about nature, and here in our habitat, this New Thought organization, this New Thought community, what I'm going to offer is that our system are the four main principles of New Thought. There's only one thing going on. Call it love, call it God, call it source, whatever it is that works for you. Because there's only one thing, everyone and everything is that. No ifs, ands, or buts. Third thing, we. No one and nothing else creates our reality, according to how we use our mind, according to how we open our heart. And then the fourth one that I don't talk about as much, but it's the practice of prayer, of affirming what we know to be true no matter what. So, even though I just finished my talk, the title of my talk is Resilience is Cultivated in Connection. And so what I'm inviting all of us to open up to is what can resilience in our community here, as we're growing from a little baby to a little toddler to a little child and so on, what can that resilience provide us? How can that resilience inform our community building as we continue to build community so that we can become more resilient? Resilience is cultivated in connection, so let's really focus our attention on nurturing those relationships and curating those experiences to cultivate more and more and more wholeness. Thank you, and so it is.